In the depths of Rome's night, when even the eternal flames of this city seemed to whisper rather than roar, the Ludus Magnus was enveloped by a silence so profound. It was almost sacred. This great gladiator school, nestled in the shadow of the Colosseum's towering arches, appeared in these pre-dawn hours like a temple of sleeping warriors, whose dreams were perhaps filled with the weight of bare feet treading upon sand, and the distant echoes of 10,000 voices. The air was thick with the rich scent of olive oil and leather, mingled with the more earthy smell of straw, and that faint metallic tang that seemed to have seeped into every stone of the training grounds. In the dormitories, rows of simple wooden beds held men who had chosen, or been chosen for a life balanced between art and death. As the eastern sky began its slow transformation from deepest black to the faintest suggestion of grey, a soft bell chimed gently through the corridors. This was not the harsh clang of a military wake-up call, but something gentler, a bronze note that seemed to rise from the earth itself, rousing these athletes of death with the reverence they deserved. For each of them lived every day as though it might be their last. Marcus Aurelius Gladius, not the name he was born with, but the identity he had earned through years of disciplined training, felt the voice seep into his dreams like warm honey. His eyes slowly opened, pupils adjusting to the dim light cast by the oil lamp that had burned through the night. Around him, other figures began to stir with the practiced quietness of men who understood that the transition from sleep to wakefulness was itself a form of meditation. The wooden floor beneath his feet was smooth and even, polished by countless mornings just like this one. As he sat on the edge of his bed, Marcus could feel the familiar ache in his shoulders. Not the sharp pain of injury, but that deep, satisfying soreness that spoke of muscles pushed to their limits and then carefully nursed back to strength. His hands, calloused from years of gripping sword hilts and shield handles, moved automatically to massage the tension in his neck. In the growing light, the dormitory revealed a beauty of ordered simplicity. Each gladiator's space was identical, a bed, a wooden chest for personal belongings, and a small shrine where offerings could be made to whatever god had won their devotion. Some favored Mars, the god of war, while others turned to Fortuna, who controlled the wheel of fate. Marcus had always been drawn to Minerva, goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, believing that in the arena, cunning would serve him better than blind courage. The morning ablutions began with the same quiet reverence that marked everything about these early hours. Water, drawn from a deep well and stored in large clay jars, was used sparingly but thoroughly. Each man washed his face and hands, the cool liquid serving as both physical cleansing and mental preparation. The water ran down their faces like tears, carrying away the residue of dreams and the tension accumulated during sleep. As they went through these familiar motions, the gladiators began to speak in low voices, not the boisterous conversation of ordinary men starting their day, but the subdued tones of those preparing for something that demanded complete focus. They discussed the quality of their sleep, any dreams that might carry omens, the state of their bodies after the previous day's training. These conversations were part diagnosis, part confession, part prayer. Before leaving the dormitory, every gladiator had to perform what they called the sacred inspection, a careful assessment of their own physical condition that would determine how they would face the coming day. Marcus ran his hands over his arms and legs, feeling for any swelling or unusual tenderness. He rotated his shoulders, testing the range of motion, listening to his body's subtle communication about what it needed. His fingers traced the network of scars decorating his torso like a map of battles fought and survived. Each mark told a story, not just of violence, but of lessons learned, techniques mastered, moments when death had come close enough to whisper secrets in his ear. The largest scar, stretching from his left shoulder blade toward his spine, was earned in his 3rd year of training, when he had failed to properly execute a defensive move. The wound took weeks to heal, during which his trainer, old Gaius, had him practice the correct motion with a wooden sword thousands of times, until the movement became as natural as breathing. Other gladiators were conducting their own versions of this ritual, each man intimately familiar with the particular needs and vulnerabilities of his body. Lucius, who specialized in net and trident, paid special attention to his wrists and forearms, where repetitive throwing motions could cause subtle strains that might prove catastrophic in combat. Quintus, a heavily armored pursuer, focused on his knees and ankles, knowing his fighting style depended on maintaining perfect balance while bearing weight. As the inspection concluded, the first true light of dawn began filtering through the high windows of the barracks. Golden rays fell across the stone floor in geometric patterns, creating a natural sundial that marked the progression from night to day. The light seemed to transform the space, revealing details hidden in shadow. The intricate carvings on wooden chests, the small personal tokens each man kept close, the way the morning light highlighted the varied skin tones of men from across the empire. The gladiators began to dress, not in their combat gear, that would come later, but in simple tunics that allowed ease of movement during morning exercises. The fabric was rough but clean, dyed a deep crimson that marked them as property of the gladiatorial school. As they pulled these garments over their heads, the action was almost ritualistic, as if they were donning priestly robes in preparation for a sacred ceremony, marking the moment when the silence of early morning began to give way to a different quality of quiet. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of focused attention. Footsteps moved with purpose across stone floors. Leather creaked softly as equipment was checked and adjusted. Somewhere in the distance, the first sounds of the city beginning to wake, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the kitchen's tall stone arched windows. The entire space was already immersed in an ancient and sacred rhythm. Massive bronze pots hung over charcoal fires, emitting a low, continuous bubbling sound, as if Mother Earth herself was softly humming a hymn to life. Steam rose slowly, forming ethereal clouds in the morning light, carrying the mingled fragrance of barley, honey, and olive oil, an aroma so rich, it seemed capable of nourishing the soul itself. The kitchen's overseer, an old man named Titus, had worked here for over 30 years, his hands tempered by countless mornings of hot steam and scalding cookware, until they were tough as leather, yet displayed an artist's grace when stirring the barley porridge. He knew every gladiator's needs, who required more protein to repair muscles, who needed extra carbohydrates to store energy, whose digestive system required special care. Barley, one of humanity's oldest companions, in Titus's hands was not merely food, but an embodiment of philosophy. Each grain carried the complete life cycle from sowing to harvest, from spring's tender green to summer's golden hue, from autumn's reaping to winter's storage. When these grains slowly bloomed in boiling water, releasing the sunlight and rain they had stored, the entire process became a meditation. Titus believed that the preparation of food was itself a form of prayer. Every movement he made while stirring was deliberate. The clockwise rotation symbolizing the sun's journey, symbolizing the cycle of life. The barley porridge in the pot gradually thickened, its color shifting from pale yellow to a warm gold, its texture becoming smooth as silk. This was not simple cooking, but alchemy, transforming humble ingredients into sacred food capable of nourishing both the body and spirit of warriors. In another smaller pot, honey was being gently heated. This honey came from beehives on the nearby hills, where bees gathered nectar from wildflowers and herbs. When the honey's temperature reached just the right point to preserve its nutritional value without destroying its natural enzymes, Titus would slowly pour it into the barley porridge. The sweet aroma immediately spread, forming a perfect balance with the earthiness of the barley. The distribution of each bowl of porridge follows an invisible geometry. Titus understands the training intensity, body type, and individual needs of each gladiator. For technique-based fighters like Marcus, more nuts and dried fruits are added to the porridge, providing sustained energy and the nutrition needed for sharp thinking. For those heavy-armored gladiators, he increases the proportion of olive oil, as they need more fat to maintain their weight and strength. Young apprentices observe Titus's every move from the side, trying to understand this seemingly simple yet complex art. What they see is not just the preparation of food, but the passing down of a life philosophy. Titus often tells them, food is fuel for the body, but more importantly, it is comfort for the soul. A hungry warrior might win a battle, but a properly nourished warrior will win respect. As the gladiators walk from the dormitory to the dining hall, their footsteps echo through the stone corridors, creating an atmosphere almost like a religious ritual. The dining hall itself is a magnificent space, with murals depicting harvest and battle scenes painted on the high ceiling. Long wooden tables are arranged according to strict hierarchy, with senior gladiators sitting closer to the kitchen, while newcomers sit farther away. But in this morning moment, the hierarchy seemed to soften. Everyone was experiencing the same transition, from sleep to wakefulness, from individual to collective, from who they were yesterday to who they might become today. They took their seats quietly, their movements carrying a ritualistic solemnity, as if what they were about to participate in was not merely a breakfast, but a sacred communion. Marcus chose his usual spot, a corner where he could observe the entire dining hall without being too conspicuous. He liked to watch others while eating, studying their habits and expressions, an observational skill equally useful in the arena. He noticed the newly arrived Gaul still appeared nervous and uneasy, eyes constantly scanning the surroundings, while the seasoned Thracian had already entered a meditative state, focused on the upcoming nutritional replenishment. When the clay bowls filled with barley porridge were placed before each gladiator, the entire dining hall fell into a profound quiet. This was not an awkward silence, but a grateful stillness. Everyone knew that this simple meal might be one of the last few meals of their lives, so every bite deserved to be cherished. Marcus raised his wooden spoon, feeling the warmth transfer from the clay bowl to his palm. The temperature of the first spoonful of porridge was just right, not hot enough to burn the tongue, but warm enough to awaken the taste buds. The earthy flavor of barley came first, then the sweetness of honey, and finally the rich taste of olive oil bloomed in his mouth. This was not merely a taste experience, but a complete sensory awakening. He could feel the warmth of the porridge slowly spreading in his stomach, a warmth that was not just physical but emotional. This was the taste of home, the feeling of safety, one of the few certainties in a world full of uncertainties. Every bite told his body you are being cared for. You are valued. You have the strength to face the challenges ahead. The process of eating itself was a form of meditation. Gladiators learned to chew slowly, not only for better digestion, but to fully experience this process of nourishment. They knew that eating hastily would lead to indigestion, and indigestion during training or combat could be fatal. Therefore, every bite was carefully chewed, every swallow a conscious act. In this slow and focused process of eating, gladiators began to feel how food transformed into energy. They could sense the gradual rise in blood sugar, muscles beginning to receive signals of nutrition, the brain becoming clearer and more focused. This was not scientific knowledge, but an intuitive understanding gained through years of physical training and self-observation. Titus would occasionally walk out from the kitchen to observe the gladiators' eating situation. His eyes were well trained, able to read a lot of information from how a person ate, who was feeling nervous, who was unwell, who needed extra attention. His presence itself was a comfort, reminding everyone that they were not just fighting machines, but human beings who needed to be cared for and nourished. Although most of breakfast time was spent in silence, this silence was filled with unspoken communication. A glance could convey encouragement, a subtle nod could express understanding, a shared smile could build friendship. These men from every corner of the empire, speaking different languages, believing in different gods, but in this morning moment they were connected by their common humanity and shared fate. Marcus noticed the young Egyptian Armon sitting across from him was struggling to adapt to the texture of the barley porridge. He gently pushed his honey jar forward, indicating that Armon could add more sweetness. This small act of kindness had no words, but the care it conveyed was more profound than any speech. Armon nodded gratefully, added more honey to his porridge, and showed the first genuine smile since arriving here. As breakfast progressed, the gladiators began to feel their body systems fully activating. The digestive system started working, blood circulation accelerated, and muscles began preparing for the upcoming training. It was a gradual process, as natural and unstoppable as the light of dawn slowly dispelling the darkness of night. They learned to listen to their body's signals, when they had eaten enough, when they needed more fluids, when they should stop eating to avoid feeling heavy during training. This bodily wisdom was acquired through years of training and experience, and was one of the most important parts of a gladiator's survival skills. When the last mouthful of porridge was swallowed, the gladiators didn't immediately get up and leave. They sat there, letting the food settle in their stomachs, letting the nutrients begin to be absorbed. These few minutes of sitting still were a gratitude for the nourishment just received, and also a mental preparation for the day about to begin, as the gladiators slowly walked from the dining hall toward the training grounds. The morning light had completely dispelled the gloom of night, dyeing the entire world a warm gold. The gates of the training grounds stood wide open, like an entrance to another world, a world composed of sweat, discipline, and the endless pursuit of perfection. The sand underfoot, trampled by countless feet, had become fine as powder, each step raising tiny particles of dust that sparkled in the sunlight, as if fragments of stars had scattered upon the earth. This training ground was not merely a space for practice, but a living temple dedicated to the gods of human potential. The tall stone walls surrounding it were carved with the names and battle records of great gladiators throughout the ages, their inscriptions casting long shadows in the morning light, as if the spirits of predecessors still guided those who came after. The air was filled with a special scent, the saltiness of sweat, the rich aroma of leather, the cool tang of metal, and that unique energy produced only when humans pushed their bodies to the limit. Marcus took a deep breath, letting this familiar fragrance fill his lungs. To him, this smell was more intoxicating than any perfume, for it represented growth, progress, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. His muscles seemed to remember this place, and even in his dreams, his body would tremble in anticipation of returning here. The trainer, old Gaius, was already waiting in the center of the grounds, his figure like an ancient statue, still and imposing. This man in his 60s had once been a legend in the arena, and now he passed on his lifetime of wisdom to a new generation of warriors. His eyes, though slightly clouded with age, remained sharp as an eagle's, able to catch every subtle flaw in movement, every sign of slackness. The body is the temple of the soul, old Gaius's voice echoed in the morning air, deep and full of authority, but the temple requires daily maintenance, requires devout dedication. Today we will not only train our muscles, but also train our will. The gladiators automatically formed neat rows, each person maintaining precise distance from one another. This arrangement was not military strictness, but an aesthetic harmony, like dancers preparing for a sacred performance. Their breathing began to synchronize, the rise and fall of their chests as regular as ocean waves, creating a collective rhythm that would guide the next few hours of training. The training began with the most basic warm-up, but even these seemingly simple movements became an art form under old Gaius's guidance. Every stretch had its specific purpose, every rotation was preparing for the more intense exercise to come. The gladiators' movements were slow and precise, like Tai Chi masters practicing in the morning light, every posture filled with inner strength and grace. Marcus felt the slow stretch of his shoulder muscles, the sensation like a flower slowly blooming in the sunlight. His arms traced perfect arcs, starting from the shoulders, passing through the elbows, all the way to the fingertips, every inch of muscle being awakened in this process. This was not merely physical preparation, but also mental adjustment, bringing body and mind to a state of perfect unity. Around him, other gladiators were performing the same ritual. The tall Germanic Brutus's movements, though appearing clumsy, were actually filled with a primitive beauty of power. Each of his movements was like sculpting the air, creating invisible sculptures. In contrast, the agile Thracian Dacia's movements flowed like mercury, his body seemingly free from skeletal limitations, able to bend into any required shape. When the warm-up ended, each gladiator picked up their training weapons, wooden swords, shields, tridents, and nets. Though these weapons wouldn't be lethal, their weight and balance were exactly the same as real weapons. The wooden sword surfaces had become smooth as silk from countless uses, the grooves on the handles fitting perfectly against the wielder's palms, as if these weapons were custom-made for each person. Marcus raised his wooden sword, feeling the familiar distribution of weight in his hand. This sword had accompanied him for 3 years, witnessing his growth from a clumsy novice to a skilled warrior. Every scratch on the blade told a story. Every worn spot recorded a step of progress. When he began practicing basic swordsmanship, the trajectory the blade traced through the air was like a calligrapher's brushstrokes, possessing both power and beauty. Remember, old Gaius walked slowly through the formation. His voice, like a hypnotist's whisper, the sword is not a tool in your hand, but an extension of your arm. When you swing the sword, don't think about controlling it, but let it become the natural expression of your will. This philosophy was perfectly embodied in the training. The gladiators' movements began to become more fluid, no longer mechanical repetition, but an organic expression. Each sword swing was unique, because it carried the emotional state, physical condition, and mental focus of the wielder at that moment. As the training deepened, a wondrous transformation began to occur. The gladiator's consciousness began to free itself from specific technical details, letting the body's wisdom take over control. This was what old Gaius often referred to as muscle memory, a bodily wisdom that transcends thought, capable of making the most correct response in an instant. Marcus felt this transformation happening within himself. His swordsmanship began to become automatic, no longer needing to think about the details of each movement. His body knew how to move, his muscles knew how to contract and relax, his breathing knew how to synchronize with his movements. This state was both exhilarating and calming, as if entering a meditative state of martial arts. In this state, time seemed to become distorted. An hour of training felt like mere minutes, yet also like eternity. Sweat began seeping from every pore. But this wasn't the sweat of pain. It was the sweat of purification, carrying away toxins from the body and distractions from the mind. Each droplet glistened like liquid diamonds, bearing witness to the perfect operation of the human machine. Old Gaius's teaching method was unique. He rarely corrected mistakes with words. More often, he guided students through demonstration and the transmission of energy. When he noticed a gladiator's movement was off, he would walk over to that person and use his own body to demonstrate the correct posture. This teaching approach transcended the limitations of language, passing directly from one body to another. Marcus remembered when he first started learning, old Gaius had stood behind him and gently adjusted his shoulder position with his hands. In that moment, he felt something like an electric current, not just a physical touch, but a direct transmission of knowledge and experience. From then on, his swordsmanship made a qualitative leap, as if old Gaius's skills had merged into his body through that touch. Now, as an experienced gladiator, Marcus began to understand the deeper meaning of this teaching method. True martial arts cannot be taught through words alone. It must be learned through direct bodily experience. Every movement contains countless subtle nuances, and these nuances can only be mastered through repeated practice and deep perception. Multiple different types of training were taking place simultaneously on the training ground, with each weapon requiring different parts of the body to play a dominant role. Gladiators wielding sword and shield needed to develop upper body strength and coordination, with their training focusing on the coordination of arms, shoulders, and core muscles. Their movements were like heroes in classical sculptures, each pose displaying a perfect combination of strength and beauty. Gladiators using tridents and nets required more flexibility and precision. Their training looked more like dancing, with bodies needing to maintain fluid movement, ready at any moment to throw the net or thrust the trident. Their footwork was light as a cat's, each step carefully calculated to maintain attack distance while being ready to dodge at any time. Training for heavily armored gladiators was completely different. They needed to maintain mobility while bearing enormous weight, requiring them to develop astonishing leg strength and balance. Their training movements were slow yet powerful, like moving fortresses, each step shaking the ground. Marcus felt sweat flowing down from his forehead, sliding along the contours of his cheeks. This sensation was both familiar and sacred, reminding him that he was undergoing a transformation from an ordinary human into a warrior. His clothes were completely soaked through, clinging to his body, outlining the contours of his muscles, but this discomfort was soon replaced by a deeper sense of satisfaction, his body telling him that he was becoming stronger. The air on the training ground became thick and charged with energy. Each gladiator emanated a special aura, a combination of focus and effort. Their breathing, footsteps, and the clashing of weapons merged into a complex symphony, a hymn to human will and physical ability. Under old Gaius's guidance, the focus of training gradually shifted from strength to precision. "Agnon can swing a sword with force," he often said, "but only a true artist can deliver a fatal blow at the right time, in the right place, at the right angle." This pursuit of precision elevated the training to an entirely new level. The gladiators began practicing attacks on specific points on imaginary enemies, each strike needing to be accurate to the centimeter. This training not only honed physical coordination, but more importantly, cultivated mental focus. Marcus focused on a hanging straw dummy, imagining it as a real opponent. His sword tip needed to strike precisely at the heart's location, without the slightest deviation. This practice required perfect hand-eye coordination, precise judgment of distance and angle, and above all, the ability to remain calm under extreme tension. Each successful hit brought a deep sense of satisfaction, not just a technical achievement, but a spiritual victory. This pursuit of precision made the gladiators understand that true combat was not savage slaughter, but a highly civilized art form. As the training progressed, a wondrous phenomenon began to emerge. All the gladiators' movements started to naturally synchronize, forming a collective rhythm. This wasn't intentional coordination, but a naturally occurring harmony, like the flight of a flock of birds or the swimming of a school of fish. This collective rhythm created a powerful energy field, from which each individual drew strength. Marcus felt this energy flowing within him, making his movements more fluid, bringing his focus to unprecedented heights. This was the physical manifestation of team spirit, proof of the heights humans could reach through collective effort. Old Gaius quietly observed all of this, a satisfied smile appearing on his face. This collective harmony was the crystallization of his years of teaching experience, one of his proudest achievements. He knew that when gladiators could reach this state, they were not only physically prepared for battle, but had also mentally achieved a realm that transcended individual limitations. When the training reached its most intense phase, the gladiators began to experience a state beyond ordinary perception. Their bodies seemed to have acquired their own wisdom, able to begin acting before consciousness made decisions. This state was called the body's awakening by old Gaius, a transformation that every true warrior must undergo. Marcus felt this awakening happening within himself. His swordsmanship became as natural as flowing clouds and water, each movement a perfect continuation of the previous one. He no longer needed to think about what to do next, because his body already knew the answer. This feeling was both exhilarating and awe-inspiring, for it revealed the infinite possibilities of human potential. In this state, the concepts of time and space became blurred. The training ground seemed to expand to infinity, while simultaneously contracting to a space where only he and his sword existed. It was a state of deep meditation, yet filled with dynamic energy. This unity of contradictions was the essence of martial arts. As the basic training neared its end, each gladiator was required to demonstrate a complete sequence of movements. This wasn't a performance, but a summary and sublimation of the entire training process. Everyone had to integrate the techniques they'd learned into a fluid whole, showcasing their personal style and skill level. Marcus took a deep breath, letting himself enter a state of complete focus. Then, he began his demonstration. Every movement was perfect, every turn filled with power and grace. His sword traced complex trajectories through the air, creating a visual poetry. Those watching could feel his inner harmony, could see the perfect fusion of technique and art. The other gladiators also demonstrated their skills in turn, each bringing a unique style and understanding. Some displayed raw power, some displayed exquisite technique, some displayed elegant beauty. But regardless of how different their styles were, they all reached the same height, elevating physical training into an art form. Old Gaius quietly observed each demonstration, a proud gleam flickering in his eyes. These young men had understood the core concept he wanted to convey. A true warrior isn't merely someone with a strong body, but an artist capable of perfectly combining strength, technique, wisdom, and beauty. When the last gladiator finished their demonstration, the training ground fell into a solemn silence. Everyone knew they had just undergone a profound transformation. They were no longer the people they had been that morning, but new selves baptized through sweat and effort. When the midday sun poured down like molten gold onto the oval sand of the arena, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. This sand, trampled by countless feet and soaked by countless drops of blood, had become the most sacred stage in this moment. The fine grains of sand sparkled in the sunlight, each one bearing the weight of history, each inch having witnessed the ultimate display of human will. A current-like tension permeated the air, not a tension of fear, but of anticipation. Anticipation for the art about to be displayed. Marcus stood in the shadows of the arena entrance, feeling the heat waves rising from the sand. His skin could sense the gaze of tens of thousands of eyes from the spectator stands. The energy field generated by that collective attention was almost tangible. He took a deep breath, letting that energy fill his lungs, then slowly exhaled, expelling all distracting thoughts from his body. This was his ritual, his preparation, his threshold for entering another plane of existence. The architecture of the arena itself was a poem written in stone. The towering stands extended upward layer upon layer, like the steps of an ancient temple, carrying the spectators toward the sky. Each level symbolized a specific social status, but at this moment, all class distinctions had vanished, for they would all become witnesses to the same artistic performance. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the stands, casting dappled shadows on the sand, creating an abstract painting that constantly shifted with the movement of the sun, adding a dynamic backdrop to the performance about to begin. When the horn sounded, that sound was like a summons from heaven, penetrating every corner of the entire arena. Marcus and his opponent, a young warrior from Gaul, stepped out of the shadows of the entrance simultaneously into the baptism of sunlight. At this moment, time seemed to become viscous, every step infinitely magnified, every movement filled with ritualistic solemnity. Thunderous cheers erupted from the spectator stands. But to Marcus, the sound became distant and blurred, as if coming from another world. His attention was completely focused on the sand beneath his feet, feeling the texture of every grain of sand between his toes. This focus was not deliberate, but occurred naturally, an automatic adjustment of body and spirit for the challenge about to come. His opponent, Galax, was a warrior worthy of respect, possessing a physique as perfect as a sculpture and movements as agile as a cheetah. When they met in the center of the arena, their eyes locked, and in that instant, an understanding beyond words was established between them. This was not a gaze of hatred, but mutual recognition between artists, an anticipation of the beauty they were about to create together. The weapon rack was solemnly wheeled to the center of the arena, sunlight casting dazzling reflections on the metal surfaces. Each weapon was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, not merely tools of killing, but vessels of beauty. The intricate carvings on the blades told ancient stories. The patterns on the shields depicted mythological scenes, and each weapon had its own unique personality and soul. Marcus slowly walked toward the weapon rack, his fingers gently brushing over the hilts of several swords, feeling their different weights and balances. In the end, he chose a medium-length sword and a round shield, a combination that perfectly embodied his combat philosophy balance between offense and defense, equal emphasis on strength and skill. When he raised these weapons, they immediately became extensions of his body. As if he was born to wield them, Galax chose a longer sword and a smaller shield, a choice that reflected his more aggressive fighting style. When the two finished selecting their weapons, they stood face to face again. This time, they were no longer just two people, but embodiments of two different combat philosophies, representatives of two different aesthetic ideals. The battle didn't begin with savage collision, but with elegant probing, like two dancers searching for each other's rhythm. Marcus and Galax began slowly circling, their footsteps light and precise, leaving perfect arc-shaped tracks in the sand. This movement wasn't merely tactical consideration, but an aesthetic expression, showcasing the elegance and power of human motion. Every step was carefully calculated, maintaining striking distance while staying ready to defend at any moment. Their gazes remained locked on each other, but this attention wasn't hostile, it was professional, the deep observation of one artist toward another. They were searching for each other's rhythm, understanding each other's style, preparing for the true clash to come. The clamor in the stands gradually subsided as people were drawn in by this elegant opening, beginning to truly appreciate the art unfolding before them. This wasn't the bloody slaughter they had expected, but a higher level of performance, a miracle that elevated violence into beauty. When the blades clashed for the first time, the crisp sound of metal collision echoed through the arena like a bell. In that instant, time seemed to freeze. The two swords forming a perfect cross in the air, sunlight casting a cross-shaped shadow through the gap between the blades. The scene was breathtakingly beautiful, as if the gods had specially arranged this visual effect for the performance. The force of the collision traveled through the hilts into both their arms, then spread throughout their entire bodies. This transmission of power wasn't painful, but exhilarating, for it represented a direct dialogue between two wills, a pure exchange of two forces. Marcus felt Galax's strength and skill, while also letting his opponent feel his own determination and ability. After separating, the two began circling again, but this time there was a new element in their movements, mutual respect. The first exchange made them both realize that the other was a true artist, an opponent worthy of their full effort. This recognition didn't increase hostility, rather it heightened their anticipation for the art they were about to create. As the battle deepened, their footwork began to display ballet-like precision and elegance. Every step had its specific purpose, every turn was full of tactical significance, yet also possessed undeniable beauty. Marcus's footwork flowed like water, each step a natural continuation of the one before, creating a fluid poetry of movement. Galax's footwork was more like the movement of a cheetah, full of explosive power and suddenness. He would suddenly change direction at certain moments, creating stunning visual effects. But even these sudden changes were full of control and precision, demonstrating the perfect coordination that a highly trained body could achieve. The audience began to understand that what they were watching was not just a battle, but the highest form of athletic artistry. Every movement deserved to be remembered, every moment deserved to be treasured. This realization caused a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the entire arena, from bloodthirsty anticipation to pure appreciation of beauty. True combat artistry lies not in the magnitude of strength, but in the mastery of timing. Both Marcus and Galax understood this deeply. Every attack they launched was chosen at the most perfect moment. every defense deployed at the most critical instant. This mastery of timing required superhuman reaction speed and profound tactical understanding. And even more, a near-instinctive artistic perception. When Marcus saw Galax's center of gravity shift slightly forward, he immediately launched a precise attack. But Galax's reaction was equally swift. His shield blocked the attack at the last possible moment, while simultaneously launching a counterattack. The speed of this offensive-defensive transition was dazzlingly fast, yet every movement was clearly visible, every detail filled with technical mastery. The people in the audience began to breathe in rhythm with the battle, their heartbeats synchronizing with the movements of the warriors on the field. This collective sense of participation transformed the entire arena into a giant living organism, with everyone becoming part of this artistic performance. As the intensity of the battle increased, the two warriors' bodies began to secrete glistening beads of sweat. These droplets sparkled under the intense sunlight, like liquid diamonds adorning their bodies. Every drop of sweat told a story of effort. Every bead of perspiration bore witness to the human body's capabilities, pushed to their limits. Sweat flowed along the contours of their muscles, tracing out perfect anatomical diagrams of the human body. The spectators could clearly see every muscle contracting and relaxing, appreciating the pure aesthetic beauty of human movement. This visual experience transcended simple viewing. It was a profound recognition of the human body's potential. When sweat dripped onto the sandy ground, it was immediately absorbed by the scorching grains, leaving behind small dark spots. These dots gradually connected into lines, the lines interweaving into patterns, creating an abstract work of art on the arena floor. This artwork could only be created by these two artists, could only exist in this moment, possessing absolute uniqueness and preciousness. In the intense battle, breathing became one of the most important artistic elements. The breathing sounds of Marcus and Galarix were clearly audible in the arena, creating a primal and powerful music. This music had no instruments, no melody, yet it was more moving than any symphony, because it came directly from the core of life. Their breathing synchronized perfectly with their movements, each inhale storing energy for the next attack, each exhale releasing all their power. This art of breathing was the result of years of training, the highest expression of bodily wisdom. The spectators unconsciously began to breathe along with this rhythm, the entire arena becoming a giant lung, everyone participating in this rhythm of life. When the battle reached its most intense phase, every moment became precious and full of tension. When Marcus's sword tip was only a few centimeters from Galarix's chest, time seemed to completely stand still. In this instant, all details became extraordinarily clear, the sunlight reflecting off the blade, the focusing Galarix's eyes, the sweat droplets dancing in the air, the held breath in the spectator stands. This slow motion-like experience was not a product of fear, but the result of extreme focus. At the edge of life and death, human perception can reach extraordinary levels, able to capture every detail normally overlooked. This experience was both awe-inspiring and fascinating, because it revealed the infinite potential of human consciousness. Galax's reaction was lightning fast. His shield precisely blocked the attack while his body rotated to the side, evading what could have been a fatal blow. The beauty of this movement was breathtaking, showcasing the elegance and efficiency the human body could achieve at its limits. As the battle progressed, a profound mutual respect developed between Marcus and Galix. This respect needed no words to express, but was conveyed through their movements, their gazes, and their overall fighting styles. Every attack showed recognition of the other's abilities. Every defense demonstrated reverence for the other's skill. When Galix successfully neutralized a particularly exquisite attack from Marcus, a glint of appreciation flashed in Marcus's eyes. Likewise, when Marcus displayed extraordinary footwork techniques, Galix would express his respect in a momentary pause. This mutual recognition elevated their battle beyond simple competition into the creation of a collaborative art. The audience could sense the presence of this respect, which gave the entire performance a deeper meaning. This was no longer a confrontation between two people, but a dialogue between two artistic philosophies, an exchange between two life philosophies. As the battle entered its climax, both warriors began to display their most exquisite techniques. Marcus executed his signature move, a complex sword and shield combination that required perfect timing and body coordination. His sword traced an elegant arc through the air while his shield performed defensive movements, the entire action flowing as smoothly as drifting clouds and flowing water. Garrix's response was equally spectacular. showcasing the spinning attack technique unique to Gallic warriors. His body spun like a top, the blade forming a deadly circle in the rotation. This attack style was both beautiful and practical, demonstrating the uniqueness of martial arts development across different cultural backgrounds. This display of skill was a feast for the spectators' eyes, as they witnessed the artistic heights that the human body and spirit could achieve. Every movement was perfect, every moment worth remembering forever. As the battle neared its end, a decisive moment arrived. Marcus and Garrix launched their final attacks simultaneously, their two swords meeting in the air, producing a soul-shaking collision. In that moment, the entire arena could feel the clash of power, the confrontation of wills. The result of the collision was Garrix's sword being knocked away, while Marcus's blade stopped at his opponent's throat. But this outcome didn't ruin the beauty of the performance. Instead, it added a perfect ending. Marcus didn't continue his attack, but slowly withdrew his sword, paying the highest respect to his opponent. Garrix responded with equal respect, and the two embraced in the center of the arena. This embrace wasn't a victor's pity for the defeated, but mutual recognition between artists. Thunderous applause erupted from the stands. Applause not just for the victor, but for the artistic miracle they had just witnessed. When the battle ended, Marcus and Galixa stood side by side facing the audience. Though their bodies were exhausted, their spirits were exceptionally full, for they knew they had just created a work of art. The sunlight was still scorching, the sand still warm, but the atmosphere of the entire arena had completely changed. They saluted the audience in all four directions, every movement filled with gratitude and humility. The applause from the spectators surged like a tide. This applause was praise for art, recognition of beauty, and tribute to the heights of the human spirit. When they finally left the arena, the sandy ground bore the traces of their battle. Footprints, marks of sweat, trails carved by weapons. These traces would soon be scattered by the wind, covered by new sand, but the artistic achievement they represented would forever remain in the memories of those who witnessed it. The setting sun began to descend westward, dyeing the arena in golden red. In this warm light, the battle that had just ended appeared even more dreamlike, as if it were a visual feast arranged by the gods for humanity. When the performance on the sand concluded, exhausted bodies needed the gentlest restoration, and this restoration itself would become the beginning of another kind of art. When Marcus and Galix left the scorching sand of the arena and stepped into the cool shade of the Gladiator School's treatment room, a completely different atmosphere immediately enveloped them. The air here was filled with the fragrance of lavender, rosemary, and various healing herbs, forming a stark contrast to the smell of sweat and dust in the arena. The walls of the treatment room were built from smooth marble, with the image of Asclepius, the god of medicine, carved on the surface, his serpent-entwined staff casting mysterious shadows in the soft candlelight. This space was designed as a true healing sanctuary, with every detail carefully considered. The high vaulted ceiling allowed air to circulate naturally, maintaining a perfect temperature. The floor was laid with warm mosaic tiles, depicting various healing plants and mythological scenes of healing. Soft light filtered through the high windows, creating a serene and sacred atmosphere inside, allowing both the body and mind that had just experienced intense combat to immediately feel soothed. Marcus took a deep breath, letting these therapeutic fragrances fill his lungs. His body began to transition from a combat state to a recovery state, muscles starting to relax, heartbeat beginning to calm. This transition wasn't sudden, but gradual, like slowly transitioning from a passionate symphony to a gentle lullaby. The old Monsieur Apollodorus was already waiting in the center of the treatment room, his very presence radiating a healing energy. This 70-year-old man had once been the royal masseur of the court, later choosing to spend the rest of his life at the Gladiator School, dedicating his lifelong skills to these brave warriors. His hands, though wrinkled with age, remained nimble and strong, each finger containing decades of accumulated healing wisdom. Apollodorus's gaze was gentle yet profound, as if able to see through every ache and tension in the human body. When he looked at Marcus, that caring gaze immediately made the young gladiator feel a fatherly warmth. This care was not pity, but a deep understanding and respect for the miraculous machine that is the human body. "Come, my child." Apollodorus's voice was sweet as honey, carrying the wisdom of years. "Let us perform a healing ritual for your body. You just created art on the sand. Now let us create another kind of art here, the art of recovery." In the center of the treatment room were several massage beds made of precious wood, their surfaces covered with the softest linen. The height of these beds had been precisely calculated, both convenient for the masseur to work and comfortable for those receiving treatment. Beside the beds were various ceramic jars of different sizes, containing different types of olive oil and healing ointments, each with its specific therapeutic effects. Apollodorus walked toward a row of exquisite ceramic jars, these containers holding top-grade olive oil from all around the Mediterranean. Each oil had its unique properties and therapeutic effects, and choosing the right oil was the first step in the art of healing. His fingers gently brushed over each jar, as if engaging in a silent conversation with them, sensing the energy within. "This bottle is olive oil from near Athens," he explained softly, his voice carrying reverence for these natural treasures. "The olive trees grow on the sunny slopes of Attica, absorbing the purest sunlight and sea breeze of the Mediterranean. This oil is particularly suited for treating deep muscle fatigue. It can penetrate to the deepest parts of the muscle fibers, carrying away all tension and pain." He selected a particularly exquisite ceramic jar, its body painted with olive branches and the goddess of peace. When he opened the lid, a rich and pure fragrance immediately spread through the air. This scent containing the essence of sunlight, earth, and time. The oil's color displayed a perfect golden green, gleaming in the candlelight. Like liquid jade, Apollodorus poured a small amount of oil into his palm, then pressed his hands together, slowly warming the precious liquid with his body heat. This process itself was a ritual embodying respect for nature's gifts and devotion to the healing arts. When the oil reached the perfect temperature, his palms emanated a warm and inviting fragrance, heralding the healing journey about to begin. When Apollodorus's hands first touched Marcus's shoulders, an electric sensation immediately coursed through the young gladiator's entire body. This was no ordinary touch, but a contact filled with healing energy, as if the old masseur's hands contained the power of the gods. Warm olive oil flowed slowly across the skin, each drop carrying a promise of healing. The old man's technique was both gentle and powerful, able to precisely sense the state of every muscle, every point of tension. His fingers seemed to have a life of their own, able to find the parts of the body most in need of attention. As he began massaging Marcus's shoulders, the tension accumulated from battles slowly began to dissipate, like ice and snow melting under the spring sun. "Feel this touch," Apollodorus said softly, his voice possessing the soothing power of a hypnotist. "Don't resist. Let your body completely relax. Your muscles have memorized the tension of battle. Now let them learn the art of relaxation. This too is a skill, just as important as your swordsmanship." The rhythm of the massage was slow and regular, like the rhythm of a heartbeat, like the sound of waves lapping against the shore. This rhythm had a hypnotic effect, causing Marcus's consciousness to begin transitioning from a waking state to a state of deep relaxation. His breathing became deep and steady, his entire body entering a state similar to meditation. As the massage deepened, Apollodorus began to address the deeper tensions in Marcus's body. His hands could sense the combat memories stored in the muscle fibers, those patterns of tension formed during intense confrontations. Through precise pressure and specific techniques, he began to reprogram these muscles, making them forget tension and remember relaxation. "Your latissimus dorsi here," the old man's fingers pressed precisely on a specific point, "has stored all your defensive movements from today. Can you feel it? This tension is like a clenched fist. Now let's slowly open it." As his fingers applied the appropriate pressure, Marcus felt a wonderful sense of release. The tension accumulated during combat receded like a tide, replaced by a deep relaxation and comfort. This feeling was not just physical, but also spiritual, as if his soul was also being purified in the process. Olive oil became a medium of healing in Apollodorus's hands. It not only lubricated the skin, but more importantly carried therapeutic energy deep into the muscle tissue. Each massage was a small miracle, transforming fatigue into vitality, tension into relaxation, and pain into comfort. During the massage, Apollodorus discovered a small wound on Marcus's arm, a mark left by a slight graze from an opponent's blade during combat. Although the wound was small, the old masseur treated it with the same seriousness and meticulousness, as if facing the most severe injury. He stopped the massage and walked toward the medicine cabinet, where various healing ointments and herbal preparations were displayed. Each medicine was stored in an exquisite container, with labels written in elegant script, noting the ingredients and uses. He selected a healing salve made from honey, myrrh, and lavender, a formula that was the crystallization of his years of experience, possessing multiple effects of reducing inflammation, relieving pain and promoting healing. "Even the smallest wound deserves our greatest attention," he said while carefully cleaning the wound. "The body is a complete system, and discomfort in any part will affect the harmony of the whole. We must not only treat the wound, but also restore the body's perfect balance." His movements were extremely gentle, as if handling the most precious work of art. When the healing salve touched the wound, Marcus felt a cool and soothing sensation, and the pain immediately began to subside. This treatment was not merely medical, but an expression of care, a respect for life. On the other side of the treatment room, other gladiators were also receiving similar treatment. But what was more touching was that they began to care for each other, applying the techniques Apollodorus had taught them to one another. This mutual care was not just practical, but an expression of emotion, reflecting the deep friendship and mutual respect among these warriors. The hulking Germanic Brutus was massaging the shoulders of the agile Thracian Dacia, his thick fingers unexpectedly gentle, as if handling the most fragile flower. Dacia had his eyes closed, a satisfied expression on his face, completely trusting as he surrendered himself to his companion's care. "We are opponents in the arena," Brutus said in his heavily accented Latin. "But here we are brothers. Your pain is my pain. Your recovery is my joy." Such scenes could be seen everywhere in the treatment room. Older gladiators taught young newcomers how to properly use olive oil, how to identify different types of muscle tension, how to transmit healing energy through touch. This passing down of knowledge was not through books, but through the contact of hand to hand, through the exchange of heart to heart. A special steam bath facility was set up in one corner of the treatment room, where various medicinal herbs were burned, producing steam with powerful healing properties. The calming effects of lavender, the invigorating effects of rosemary, the anti-inflammatory properties of eucalyptus leaves, all of these blended together in the warm steam, creating a natural healing environment. After completing his massage, Marcus was guided to the steam area. As he sat on the warm stone bench, letting the herbal steam envelop him, a deep sense of peace washed over him. The steam not only cleansed his skin, but more importantly purified his respiratory system, turning each breath into a small healing treatment. "Breathe deeply," Apollodorus instructed from the side. "Let these sacred plant essences enter your body. They carry the healing power of Mother Earth, capable of repairing the most minute damage in your body." The steam condensed into small droplets on Marcus's skin, then slowly trickled down, carrying away all impurities from the body's surface. This process was both a physical cleansing and a spiritual purification. In this warm and fragrant environment, he felt a deep connection with nature, felt the generous gifts of the plant kingdom to humanity. The entire treatment process was not merely a medical procedure, but a sacred ritual. Each step had its deeper meaning, each movement embodied respect for the body as a sacred vessel. Apollodorus conveyed this philosophy to every gladiator who received treatment, helping them understand the importance of body maintenance. "Your bodies are gifts bestowed by the gods," the old man's voice echoed through the steam, carrying a religious-like devotion. "They are not merely tools for battle, but dwellings for the soul. Caring for the body is worshipping the gods. Maintaining the body is fulfilling a sacred duty." This philosophy transformed the simple healing process into a form of spiritual practice. The gladiators began to view their bodies from an entirely new perspective, no longer seeing them as something taken for granted, but as treasures requiring careful nurturing. They learned to listen to their bodies' voices, understand their bodies' needs, and establish a deeper connection with their bodies. The final stage of treatment involved using heated stones for deep muscle relaxation. These stones came from nearby volcanic regions, possessing special mineral compositions and energy properties. They were heated to the perfect temperature, then placed on specific acupoints of the body, achieving deep muscle relaxation through the conduction of heat. When the warm stones touched Marcus's back, he felt an unprecedented sense of relaxation. The heat slowly penetrated into the deep layers of his muscles, melting away all remaining tension and fatigue. This feeling was like returning to a mother's embrace, like returning to the most primal sense of safety. Apollodorus knew precisely where each stone should be placed and how long it should remain. His technique embodied years of accumulated experience and a deep understanding of the body's energy flow. Each stone was a small sun, transmitting warmth and healing energy to the weary body. In ancient times, there was no clear boundary between medicine and art. Healing was both science and art. Apollodorus's work perfectly embodied this unity. He not only understood the anatomical structure and physiological functions of the human body, but more importantly, he understood the subtle connection between body and mind, knowing how to achieve spiritual harmony through physical treatment. True healing, he explained while adjusting the position of the stones, is not just about repairing damage, but about restoring balance. Body, mind, and spirit must achieve perfect harmony. Only then can true health be realized. We must treat not just the symptoms, but the whole person. This holistic approach to treatment allowed the gladiators to recover, not only physically, but also gain new strength spiritually. They began to understand that true strength comes not only from muscular power, but from the harmonious unity of body and mind. As the treatment process deepened, the entire treatment room fell into a sacred silence. This silence was not empty, but filled with healing energy. In this silence, everyone could hear the voice from the deepest part of their heart, could feel the most subtle changes in their body. Marcus entered a meditation-like state in this silence. His consciousness began to shift from the external world to the internal world, began to explore every corner of his body. He could feel the blood flowing through his vessels, could hear the rhythmic beating of his heart, could experience the life energy brought by each breath. This inner exploration gave him a completely new understanding of his own body. He began to understand that the body is not just a physical existence, but also an energy system, a vessel of wisdom. Every cell contains the miracle of life, and every organ works for the harmony of the whole. In the treatment room, a special kind of energy began to flow among everyone. This energy is not a fantasy of mysticism, but a real manifestation of human care and compassion. When one person genuinely cares about another's suffering, a healing power is generated, a power that can transcend physical boundaries and act directly on the body and mind of the sufferer. Apollodorus was the main conductor of this energy, but everyone present participated in this healing process. Their very presence was a form of support, their care was a kind of medicine. This collective healing experience made everyone feel that they were not alone, but part of a community full of love and support. In a state of deep relaxation, Marcus began to experience the awakening of body wisdom. This wisdom is not acquired through learning, but is something the body itself possesses. It knows how to heal wounds, how to restore balance, how to maintain the miracle of life. During the treatment, this wisdom was activated and began to take charge of the body's recovery process. He could feel his body repairing itself, experience the regeneration of cells, hear the sound of tissues healing. This experience filled him with awe for the miracle of life and gratitude for the wisdom of the body. He began to understand that the true healer was not an external doctor, but the inner wisdom of the body. When all the treatment procedures were completed, Apollodorus performed a final blessing ritual for each gladiator. He used the remaining olive oil to draw sacred symbols on their foreheads while reciting ancient healing prayers. This ritual marked the formal end of the treatment process and was also a celebration of the body's recovery. May your bodies be as strong as olive trees. His voice was filled with the power of blessing. May your spirits be as pure as olive oil. May you display in tomorrow's challenges the strength you have recovered today. Marcus felt a sense of completeness he had never experienced before. His body had not only recovered physically, but more importantly had been renewed spiritually. He felt he was no longer the weary warrior who had walked into the treatment room, but a new man who had regained vitality and hope. As they prepared to leave the treatment room, the golden light of the setting sun streamed through the high windows onto the marble floor, creating a warm and sacred atmosphere. This light seemed like the gods' acknowledgement of their recovery, a blessing for the new challenges they were about to face. When the body is repaired, the mind also needs a moment of quiet contemplation, and this inner exploration will guide them on a journey of deeper self-discovery. As the warm afterglow of the treatment still flowed gently through his body, Marcus walked alone toward the meditation garden of the Gladiator school. This was a private space surrounded by high walls, specially designed for warriors who needed inner tranquility. As the sun set in the west, golden light filtered through the olive tree branches onto the stone path, creating dappled and poetic patterns of light and shadow. Every leaf swayed gently in the breeze, making a silky, rustling sound, a noise with a natural hypnotic effect that could calm the deepest restlessness within. In the center of the garden stood a small statue of a philosopher, the figure of Socrates, his wise eyes gazing into the distance, as if contemplating the ultimate meaning of life. Around the statue were placed several simple stone benches, their surfaces worn smooth as jade by the passage of time. Marcus chose the bench facing west and sat down, letting the setting sun shine directly on his face. feeling that warmth that was gentle rather than scorching. At this moment, time seemed to become slow and viscous. The intense battles of the day, the gentle restoration in the treatment room, all these experiences slowly settled in his consciousness, like sediment in a river eventually falling to the riverbed, leaving behind clear and transparent thoughts. His breathing became deep and rhythmic, each inhale bringing in fresh air and the energy of life, each exhale releasing the tension and distractions within. In this tranquil atmosphere, Marcus began to reflect on his performance in the arena today. But this reflection was not a simple replay, but a deep introspection, a philosophical contemplation of his own actions and motivations. He closed his eyes, letting the images of memory slowly unfold on the screen within his mind, every detail magnified and examined. He recalled the moment of locking eyes with Galax, that understanding and respect that transcended language. In that instant, they were no longer enemies, but two artists pursuing perfection, two philosophers seeking meaning at the edge of life and death. This realization gave him a completely new understanding of today's battle. This was not a simple competition, but a spiritual exchange, an exploration of humanity. Was what I showed today my true self? He asked himself in his heart. This question like a pebble thrown into a calm lake, stirring up ripples upon ripples. He began to examine his every movement, every decision, searching for the true motivation within. Was it for the audience's applause? Was it to prove his own worth, or was it for some higher pursuit? As his thoughts deepened, he realized that there were indeed moments in today's battle where his actions stemmed from pure artistic impulse, rather than any external pressure or expectation. In those moments he felt a power that transcended the self, a sensation of harmonious resonance with the universe. This experience made him understand that true honor lies not in victory or defeat, but in whether one can maintain inner purity and nobility at the limits of one's being. As the sunlight grew softer, Marcus's thoughts turned to a more profound theme: death. As a gladiator, death was not a distant abstract concept, but a real possibility he had to face every day. Yet in this tranquil twilight moment, his contemplation of death was not fearful, but philosophical, even poetic. He recalled the teachings of the Stoic philosophers. Death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it, an indispensable link in nature's cycle. Just as flowers must wither to bear fruit, just as the sun must set to welcome a new dawn, death too is a manifestation of life's completeness. This understanding gradually dissolved his fear of death, replacing it with a calm acceptance. "If tomorrow were my last day," he murmured softly, his voice sounding especially clear in the garden's tranquility, "how would I spend it? What would I regret? What would I be proud of?" These questions were not morbid self-torment, but healthy self-examination, a deep contemplation of life's value. He realized that a proper understanding of death could actually make life more precious and meaningful. When a person truly accepts the inevitability of death, he will cherish every present moment more and focus more on what truly matters. This awareness is not negative, but positive. It can inspire greater courage and deeper wisdom. As his thoughts deepened, Marcus began to explore the true meaning of honor. In the world of gladiators, honor is usually associated with victory, courage, and the recognition of the audience. But in this quiet moment of reflection, he began to question these traditional definitions, searching for the deeper essence of honor. What is true honor? Is it the moment of defeating an opponent, the thunderous applause from the stands, or some more internal, more enduring quality? Through deep introspection, he began to realize that true honor might lie in maintaining inner integrity, in being able to uphold one's principles and values under any circumstances. He recalled how at the end of today's battle, he chose not to harm Galax, who had already lost his weapon. In that moment, he didn't consider the audience's expectations or the rule's demands, but listened to the voice deep within his heart. That voice told him that true victory lies not in defeating an opponent, but in surpassing oneself, in displaying the noblest qualities of humanity. This realization gave him a completely new understanding of honor. Honor is not an external reward, but an internal quality, not the recognition of others, but self-acceptance. Not a momentary achievement, but enduring character. This kind of honor cannot be taken away by anyone because it exists in the deepest part of the soul, a core component of one's personality. In the warm light of the setting sun, Marcus's thoughts drifted to the distant past, back to his life before he became a gladiator. Those memories were like aged wine, becoming richer and more precious with the fermentation of time. He remembered the olive groves of his homeland, remembered his father's patience when teaching him to use farming tools, remembered the lullabies his mother hummed during summer twilights. These memories were not painful but warm. They reminded him that before becoming a gladiator, he was first a person with rich emotions and deep connections. These early experiences shaped his character, gave him the resilience to face difficulties, gave him the ability to find hope in despair. He remembered how he felt when he first left his hometown, that complex feeling of fear of the unknown intertwined with a longing for adventure. Back then, he couldn't imagine that he would become a gladiator performing for thousands of spectators in the arena. But looking back now, that departure was perhaps fate's arrangement, a necessary step in his life's journey. These personal stories are not merely memories, but an important part of his identity. They remind him that no matter how the external environment changes, no matter what role he plays, his core essence remains that child who grew up in the olive grove, that young man full of curiosity and goodwill toward the world. In this state of deep introspection, Marcus felt a spiritual connection with his distant family. Although he couldn't actually write to them, he began composing in his mind a letter that would never be sent, a confession from the depths of his soul. "Dear Father," he began writing in his mind, "today in the arena I remembered the wisdom about the land that you taught me. You said that true strength lies not in conquest, but in understanding and respect. Today I understood the profound meaning of those words. In the clash with my opponent, I learned to respect his skill, to understand his courage, and this transformed our battle into a kind of art, rather than simple violence. Dear Mother, your lullaby echoed in my heart today, giving me peace in the most tense moments. The lessons you taught me about gentleness and compassion made me choose forgiveness over revenge in the moment of victory. I hope you know that no matter where I am, your love is always the warmest light in my heart." The process of writing this kind of heartfelt letter was itself a form of therapy, a reconnection with his deepest emotions. It made him realize that no matter how his external identity changed, the emotional bond with his family was always the source of his strength, his spiritual pillar in difficult times. As dusk deepened, Marcus's thoughts became more philosophical. He began to ponder some fundamental questions. What is the meaning of life? What do we live for? What is truly worth pursuing? These questions had no standard answers, but the process of thinking itself held profound value. He recalled the various philosophical viewpoints he had heard in the gladiator school. Some said the meaning of life lay in pursuing pleasure, others said it lay in fulfilling duties, and still others said it lay in self-actualization. But in this tranquil moment he began to form his own philosophical perspective. Perhaps the meaning of life lay in this very search itself, in constantly questioning, exploring and growing. As a gladiator, he walked the edge between life and death every day, and this extreme experience gave him a unique perspective on life. He realized that true living wasn't about length, but about depth, not about safety, but about meaning, not about comfort, but about growth. This understanding gave him a deeper comprehension and acceptance of the path he had chosen. When the last ray of sunset disappeared below the horizon, Marcus felt an unprecedented inner peace. This peace was not empty, but fulfilling, not passive, but active, not escapist, but confrontational. He had completed today's inner journey, from the intensity of combat to the gentleness of healing, and then to the depth of contemplation. He stood up and paid tribute to the statue of Socrates, thanking this ancient sage for his silent companionship. The olive trees in the garden swayed gently in the evening breeze, making a rustling sound like prayers. Stars began to twinkle in the sky, heralding the arrival of night and a new beginning. In this perfect moment, Marcus felt his harmonious unity with the universe. He was no longer a lonely individual, but a note in the grand symphony of the universe, a drop of water in the river of life. This realization gave him immense comfort and strength, preparing him to face whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. When night had completely fallen, and the stars were embedded like diamonds in the velvet night sky, Marcus came to the highest point of the gladiator school, a terrace specifically used for nighttime meditation. Here, far from the daytime clamor, only starlight and moonlight served as companions. The cool night breeze gently caressed his body that had been baptized throughout the day, bringing the final tranquility and solace. In this sacred moment he began the most important ritual of the day, the ultimate integration of body and spirit. This was not simple relaxation, but a profound philosophical contemplation, an ultimate exploration of the essence of human existence. Starlight cast a silver glow upon his skin, making his body appear as sacred and perfect as an ancient sculpture. He slowly sat down, adopting the meditative posture revered by ancient philosophers. His spine straight but not rigid, hands resting naturally on his knees, eyes half closed, gazing into the infinite space within. In this posture, his body became the perfect vessel for the spirit, matter and consciousness achieving harmonious unity. Under the witness of Starlight, Marcus began to contemplate a fundamental question that had troubled countless philosophers: the relationship between body and spirit. As a gladiator, he understood the importance of the body more profoundly than anyone. Yet, at the same time, he was also aware of the tremendous power of the spirit. Today's experiences had given him an entirely new understanding of this relationship. The body is not the prison of the spirit, he silently recited in his heart, a conclusion he had reached through personal experience, but rather the expression of the spirit, the dance of the soul in the material world. He recalled the sensations in the arena today, those moments of complete unity between body and mind, the transcendent experience that arose when skill, strength, will, and wisdom merged into one. He began to understand that true philosophy is not abstract speculation, but is realized through bodily practice. Every training session is a philosophical contemplation. Every battle is a spiritual exploration. Every movement of the body carries the content of consciousness. Every drop of sweat witnesses the growth of the spirit. This realization gave him a completely new understanding of his profession. He was no longer merely a gladiator who fought with his body, but a philosopher who explored the meaning of life with his entire being. The arena was no longer just a stage for performance, but a laboratory for philosophical practice, a dojo for spiritual cultivation. In deep meditation, Marcus's thoughts resonated with the wisdom of ancient sports philosophers. He recalled the ancient Greeks' understanding of physical training. They believed that athletics was not merely exercise for the body, but cultivation of character, an elevation of the spirit. This philosophy was perfectly validated in his experience today. A sound mind in a sound body, this ancient maxim gained new vitality under the starlight. Marcus realized that this didn't mean physical health could guarantee mental health, but rather that body and spirit must develop in harmony, mutually promoting each other. A truly healthy person is one whose body, mind, and soul are completely unified. He recalled Plato's teachings on physical training. True physical education is not about creating a strong body, but about cultivating a beautiful soul. Today in the arena, when he chose to respect his opponent, rather than simply pursuing victory, his physical training transformed into spiritual cultivation, his display of martial arts elevated into an expression of character. This ancient wisdom found new expression in modern gladiators. Every training session was a forging of character, every battle a test of spirit. Physical strength provided the foundation for spiritual growth, while nobility of spirit gave meaning and value to bodily actions. Under the vast starry sky, individual existence seemed so insignificant, yet so precious at the same time. Marcus gazed at the stars filling the sky, contemplating the ultimate meaning of life. Every star had its unique radiance, every life its unique value. This realization gave him a deeper understanding and acceptance of his own life. "We are all children of the universe," he said softly, his voice remarkably clear in the night sky, made of stardust and destined to return to stardust. But in this brief existence, we have the chance to create beauty, experience love, and pursue truth. That is where the meaning of life lies. As a gladiator, he lived every day under the shadow of death, but this experience actually gave him a deeper appreciation and understanding of life. He realized that the meaning of life lies not in its length, but in its depth, not in safety, but in experience, not in possessing, but in giving. Today's battle, healing, and contemplation were all concrete manifestations of this meaning of life. In the arena, he experienced the limits of human potential. In the treatment room, he felt the care between people. In meditation, he explored the essence of existence. These experiences made his life rich and meaningful, made his existence precious and unique. Facing the new day that was about to come, Marcus felt no anxiety or fear, but was filled with philosophical calm and readiness. He knew tomorrow might bring new challenges, new opponents, even new dangers, but he was already prepared to face all of it in his best state. This preparation was not just physical, but more importantly spiritual. Through today's complete experience, from intense combat to gentle healing, From deep contemplation to final integration, he had achieved an inner balance and harmony. This state allowed him to face any situation with the purest mindset. Tomorrow's me will be a continuation of today's me, but will also be a completely new me. He silently recited in his heart, because each day's experience will make me grow, each challenge will make me more complete. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know I am ready. The philosophical foundation of this readiness was acceptance of change and embrace of the unknown. He no longer tried to control the future, but focused on perfecting the present. He no longer feared death, but cherished life. He no longer pursued external validation, but upheld inner wholeness. When night fell deep and the whole world was immersed in tranquility, Marcus began his final prayer. This was not a plea to any specific deity, but gratitude toward the entire universe, praise for the miracle of life, and blessings for tomorrow's possibilities. Thank you to this beautiful world for giving me the chance to experience. His voice sounded especially devout under the starry sky. Thank you to my body for carrying my spirit. Thank you to my opponents for teaching me respect. Thank you to my companions for giving me love. Thank you to my pain for helping me grow. Thank you to my joy for making me whole. This kind of prayer was the perfect summary of his day's experience and a true expression of his inner state. In this sacred moment, he felt a deep connection with the universe, felt the immense honor of existing as a human being. He was no longer a lonely individual, but an expression of cosmic consciousness, a component of the flow of life. The starlight witnessed his prayers and the night wind carried his gratitude. In this cosmic embrace, he felt an unprecedented peace and contentment. He had completed all of today's lessons and was ready to welcome tomorrow's fresh start. When all the thinking was done, all the feelings were integrated, and all the preparations were ready, Marcus slowly stood up, preparing to return to his room. The starry sky was still brilliant, the night breeze still gentle, but he knew it was time to let his body get the rest it deserved. He gazed at the starry sky one last time, deeply imprinting this beautiful scene in his heart. Then, carrying all of today's gains, the honor of battle, the warmth of healing, the wisdom of contemplation, the harmony of integration, he slowly walked toward his resting place. In his simple but tidy room, moonlight streamed through the small window onto the bed, creating a sacred and tranquil atmosphere. As he lay down, he felt every part of his body thanking him for today's experiences. Preparing for tomorrow's challenges, his breathing became deep and steady, his heartbeat stable and strong. In this perfect state of body and mind, sleep was no longer simple rest, but a sacred process of recovery, a natural expression of bodily wisdom, a deep exploration of the spiritual world.